So, thank you everyone for coming. My name's Jade. I'm a white woman with long brown hair and I'm wearing a navy shirt. I'm the programs officer here at Snowdon Trust. I've been here for about 18 months, so I was part of last year's scholarship cycle as well. And I work quite heavily on the grants program too. And we'll just run through the basics of the program before introducing our panel. So we'll just run through some quick basics of program. Quick overview of our eligibility criteria. So to apply, you must have a diagnosed disability. You must have UK home fee status. You must be residing in the UK for the duration of your course, and you must be over 16. There's no upper age limit, so anyone over the age of 16 is very welcome to apply. Your course must be a full master's degree. This can be in any subject at all. We're not picky. Your course can't have started before you apply to us, and it must start after August of this year and before July of next year. It must be your first master's degree. We do very occasionally consider applications for a second master's degree where you might need to retrain because of your disability, but this is very exceptional, sort of case by case consideration. In the vast majority of instances, we do require that it be your first master's degree, and it must be at a UK university. It can be full-time or part-time over any duration. We don't mind. It can also be an in-person course, it can be a hybrid course, it can be an online course, as long as it's a full master's degree. Onto the sort of finances side of it. So the award is up to £30,000. Up to £15,000 is available for tuition fees. So if your tuition fee balance is above 15,000, you would be responsible for any balance left over. And then you would also receive a £15,000 maintenance grant. The award is not means tested. We don't restrict what the maintenance grant can be spent on. You can spend it on whatever you like. The intention is that it provides a bit of a safety net for you when you're studying. And we don't restrict you from applying for any other funding or loans. In terms of the application process, so our stage one applications open today, very shortly. They'll open at 2 p.m. And the final date for you to submit will be the 19th of March, just before midnight at 11:55 p.m. If you're invited to complete a stage two application, we will let you know shortly, and the deadline for this will be the 30th of April, again, just before midnight at 11:55. From this point on, if you proceed in the process, you'll be invited for an interview. These will be scheduled between the 24th and the 26th of June, and there will be in-person and online interview options available. And you'll receive a final decision by mid-July 2026, so this summer. We'll move on now to going through the questions that have been submitted in advance for our panel. So I'll let everyone introduce themselves. So Katie, are you around to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a white woman with shortish, blondish hair, wearing a blue jumper. I'm the communications and fundraising officer at Snowdon Trust, and I'll just be helping answer some of your questions in the Q&A chat today.
Right, thanks, Katie. Joe, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm a white male in their late 20s with dark brown hair, wearing glasses, and I'm a Snowdon Master Scholar for the 2025-26 cohort, and I'm currently studying an MA in choreography at Central School of Ballet.
Thanks so much, Joe. Letty, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Letty. I'm a 23-year-old white woman with short blonde hair. I've got it in little space bunches and I'm wearing a green jumper. And I'm studying my master's in disability design and innovation at UCL. I'm in my first year and I'm a Snowdon scholar. Thanks.
Amazing. Thanks, Letty. Molly?
Thanks, Jade. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly. I am a white woman with short brown hair and glasses, and I am the deputy chair of the trustee board for the Snowdon Trust and also a previous scholar.
Perfect, Molly. I'm going to pass over to Helen now to say a few words as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Helen Saelensminde. I'm the Chief Executive of the Snowdon Trust. And thanks so much to all of you who have joined us today. My visual description, I'm a white woman with blonde shoulder length hair, and I'm wearing a navy jumper with a blue and white patterned shirt. I just wanted to say a few words. I wanted to start by saying briefly why we created this scholarship. And that's because disabled students and disabled people face barriers that limit access to study, which block progression into leadership roles, and which create hurdles that non-disabled peers just never have to consider. And we know they have nothing to do with our ability or ambition, and everything to do with systems and structures that weren't built with disabled people in mind. But we see disabled people who are leading innovation, who are challenging injustice, who are reshaping their fields and opening doors. And this scholarship was created to recognise that leadership and to support it and to help it grow. And we're really investing in change makers who are paving the way for disabled people everywhere. And I just wanted to start by saying how much we really value everyone who applies for this scholarship. We understand the time, the energy, and the emotional investment that goes into putting yourself forward. And we recognise the courage it takes to share your story and to articulate your vision. And we want you to know that your application matters to us. But I do also want to be really honest about just how competitive this scholarship has become. And on the basis of the applications we've had over the last few years, it's likely we'll award scholarships to about 1% of applicants. And because of the sheer volume of applications, that also means that some really strong applications might not even make it to stage 2. So I just wanted to be really clear that that isn't a reflection of your ability or your leadership potential or the strength of your application. It's not about your work not being good enough. It's just the reality of how many extraordinary people apply for this award and the limits of the resources that we've got available. But I also wanted to let you know that your application still really matters, because every story you share with us helps build evidence about the barriers that disabled people are facing. And you're helping us highlight what needs to change. You're helping us advocate and push for better. And whether or not you get the scholarship, you're contributing to our wider work and helping influence real and structural change. And actually, we recognise that for many of you, applying for this scholarship isn't the beginning of your leadership journey. This is work you're already doing, driving change through your studies, through your activism and your work, and in the ways that you're pushing against barriers you shouldn't have to every single day. So this scholarship won't define your impact. It's just one route of support. And so if you don't make it through this year, I don't want you to let that knock your confidence. It's incredibly tough competition. So please keep going, keep building, keep pushing in your field, because your work, your ideas and your presence are already making a difference, and they'll continue to with or without this award. And so, but despite how competitive it is, or maybe because it's so competitive, we're genuinely really excited to welcome the next cohort of brilliant Snowdon scholars, because you'll be a group of people who we know will go on to shape your fields and drive change in really powerful ways. And before we move on, I would really like to introduce someone who plays a key part in making this programme responsible. And I'm delighted that we're joined today by Philippa Charles, who's representing the DFN Charitable Foundation. Because this year, DFN are funding up to 6 scholarships, specifically for applicants whose ambitions are focused on reducing the disability employment gap, likely through leadership in corporate management or government and policy. And I'd just like to introduce Philippa to say just a couple of words about why this work is so important to DFN and also to the wider mission that we're all working towards. So, Philippa.
Thank you, Helen. And in terms of description, I'm a white woman with shoulder length blonde hair, glasses, and wearing a blue and navy checked dress. And I'm absolutely delighted that our partnership, the DFN Foundation, continues with the fantastic team at the Snowdon Trust to make more scholarships available for talented students. One of our key objectives at the DFN Foundation is to address the disability employment gap. And we're doing this through 4 main areas: education, employment work, through policy and advocacy, and also through supporting talented people who are role models and will go on to create great change in the future, which is obviously where part of where these incredible scholarships come in. So I really would, like Helen, encourage you to apply. We would absolutely love to hear from you. The Snowdon Trust team are fantastic, very knowledgeable, responsive, and very experienced at this, and we are delighted to be working with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen and Philippa. I'd just like to highlight as well that we do actually have a DFN scholar on the call with us. Letty was a DFN funded scholar last year. So we're going to move on to the questions submitted for panelists in advance now. And this first one here, I believe, is for Molly. So what key elements are panelists searching for in an application? And are there any green flags that demonstrate potential as a future change maker?
Thanks, Jade. So I'm sure if you've made it here, you've already seen our website, which sets out sort of the criteria for a scholarship like this. So that's things like using your lived experience of disabling barriers as a driver for change, pursuing academic or professional qualifications that will directly contribute to success on your leadership journey, evidence the same high standards in your existing academic achievements, or be able to explain the disability barriers which prevented you from attaining the course places or grades you'd hoped for. But one thing that I'd like to highlight is it's not just about where you've been, it's not just about what you've done before. And this is something that I think is you see in scholarship applications, but you also see in job applications and in CVs and all that sort of thing more widely. It's also about where you're going and how this course fits into that journey. So that might be that you're looking to pursue a PhD, and this is sort of a part of that before you get to that stage. It might be that you are doing a master's in public policy and you'd like to influence the government to change, whatever policy about disabled people. What we want to see is not just what you've done, but where you want to go. So that would be my advice on green flags.
Thank you, Molly. And I just want to say at this point, for any of the panel, if you want to jump in at any point on any question, please do. But the next question that we have, if the slides will move, is for Letty, I believe. So what is one thing that you wish you had known before you applied?
I might have answered this slightly wrong, but I kind of did like what I would change about how I did my application, which is that I would have started writing it a lot earlier on. I did give myself a lot of time, but there's so much to distill in terms of information into your application, because you're talking about like your entire identity as a disabled person and academically and your entire goals for the future. There's a lot going on. So I think I started writing it and then I kept having new ideas and rewriting it and changing things. So I think I would have sat down, maybe done like a mind map, talked to friends and family, because academics and stuff were coming to me and being like, Letty, remember that project you did? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna write that in. So I would have like sat down, done a mind map and made sure I had kind of a vision of all the ways in which my disability and my goals for the future kind of came together and connected to the scholarship, and then started writing it from there, because I definitely wasted a lot of my own time and effort doing it in quite an inefficient way. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Letty. That's really good advice. Our next question is for Joe. So how did your lived experience shape your application and leadership goals?
So I think that this for me was a really important component to my application, because when I applied last year, I just decided that I wanted to develop my own production company for dance and performance to give disabled artists more opportunities and hopefully show what was possible. So I think for anyone who is looking to apply this year, you definitely want to think about how your lived experience has shaped you, how it's shaped the goals that you want to achieve. And I think someone once said to me that your lived experience, whilst there's a lot of challenges, is also a superpower, because no one else is going to have that lived experience. So use that own unique experience and bring that to life in your application. And I think it's really important, especially with leadership goals, because as part of my Snowdon Trust support, I've also joined the Disabled Leaders Network. And I think what's really great is if you look at your sort of your leadership goals and what you want to achieve, if you're fortunate to hopefully get some support from the Snowdon Trust, through the Disabled Leaders Network or any other associated programs, to do with the Snowdon Trust, they can really help you create a program of development that will enable you to think, oh, yes, this is what I want to do, and these are the possibilities that can happen.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, and thanks so much for highlighting the Disabled Leaders Network, or the DLN, as we abbreviate it to. All scholars that are longlisted will be invited to join the DLN, and the DLN is a fantastic network full of people of all experiences at all levels. And as Joe said, it's really a supportive place to work on your development. Our next question is for Molly again. So, what makes an application competitive beyond academics and extracurriculars?
Yeah, so like I said, it's not just about what you've done in the past, it's what you've done in the future. But what I'd encourage you to do is think about everything. So it's not just, it's not just your grades, it's not just the societies you've been involved with or the companies you've set up or all those other wonderful things. Think about how you've influenced, how you've supported people, and don't be afraid of shouting out the great things you've done, because I know we all have a tendency to minimize things in my head and be like, oh well, I did this project and I led a committee of a few people, but it wasn't really that impactful. Shout about what you've done. That's what we need to hear from you. So don't be afraid to share.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. That's really good advice, actually. I think everyone has a tendency to do that sometimes. We're back to Letty again with, how did you balance your disability narrative with your leadership narrative?
So I think I was quite lucky in that most of my leadership has been connected to disability justice or human rights movement. So it was a bit easier for me to weave in my own personal experience into that journey. But I went back over my application just before this, and I think I only really explained my disability and how it affects me in the first stage when those were like explicitly asked. And then later on, whenever I talked about my disability, it was about how it informs my advocacy work and how having lived experience has allowed me to find the areas in which I could make changes. So like, for example, one of the things I did was I set up a few disability sports clubs at my undergrad. And so I was talking about what disability sports had meant for me and how that had been a space that had like given me community and given me confidence, and like what that meant for me as myself, but then what could I do with that and how I could help other people. So it was kind of like a thread going across. I think I also talked about it in my degrees in sort of engineering and design, and how we need more disabled designers and like lived experience, people working with lived experience. So I mentioned my disability and how that would lead into my leadership, but I didn't hugely talk about my disability itself for most of the application.
Thanks, Letty. Our next question is for Joe. So, how does the scholarship influence your study experience, activism, and disability advocacy?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things for me being a Snowdon Master Scholar this year is it's looking at, I really think the Disabled Leaders Network has really helped influence my sort of study, my experience and activism. And it kind of follows on a little bit from what Letty is saying, is that I think when I originally applied, I kind of thought that my disability and the leadership experiences were kind of more separate. but actually what made it easier for me is then to connect them a little bit more. So it was thinking about, well, I've had this experience with my disability, and then this has led me to think, well, how can I affect change through leadership and advocacy? So for example, the sort of the industry that I'm in, dance and choreography, there are not really many dancers or choreographers doing classical ballet with a disability. So I started to think about how some of those challenges, whether that's actual physical barriers, financial barriers, or even attitudinal barriers, how that had sort of made me feel, how that had affected my potential. And then I thought about, well, how can I then use that experience to then advocate for others and really influence what I want to do? And with my master's course at the moment, with my study, something I'm really interested in is I've sort of taken some of the techniques and experiences that I learned as a disabled person, but because I'm predominantly working with people who don't have a lived experience of disability, how can I then take these ideas and methodologies and use that to inform dancers or people that I work with to have more of an inclusive and equitable practice, regardless of whether disability or lived experience of a disability is something they experience on a daily basis.
Thanks so much, Joe. That was a brilliant answer. Back to Molly again. So, how much weight does the selection panel place on the narrative of applicants' disability journey versus our academic grades?
So I think this question is relating to the criteria about you can evidence the same high academic standards in your academic achievements, or you can be able to explain the disability barriers which prevented you from accessing things in the past. Your disability journey is the context to your academics, and explaining not only that it has affected you, but how it's affected you is really useful. But the one thing I want to reassure you about is that the grades are one element of the wider picture. So don't be put off by thinking, oh, well, my overall, my A levels and my university grade was slightly lower than I hoped, I shouldn't apply. That's absolutely not the case. Explain it and give us the detail, because then we can consider it. And like I said, this is one part of the application, but there are lots of other things we're considering. So just tell us, and don't be put off just because you might be less strong in one of these elements.
Thanks, Molly. I think that's really reassuring. Back to Letty, what do you think made a difference in your own application?
It's a bit hard to speculate, but I think the way I approached it is that I wanted to be a very honest application. I didn't want to try and manipulate how I felt about everything to sort of like fit boxes or anything like that. So I kind of treated it as a reflective essay on my past 4 years with disability and how it's affected my academics and where I'm going in the future. And then I sort of wrote that, and then I fitted it into the boxes as best I could. I also did get feedback that for my year, we did a video, that people liked the video. And that was, again, it was just really honest. It was like clips of myself and just about myself. And I was just expressing who I am and why I want this help and what I think I might be able to do. I think it was helpful for me that it was quite easy for me to connect the dots between my disability and what I want to do as a degree and the way I might be able to help other people, including disabled people in the future, because my master's is in disability design and innovation. So it was quite a linear connection between those things. So I used that path quite a lot to explain, asking people to, I think the whole thing is investing in disabled potential or something along those lines. So, you are trying to show your potential and what you're capable of and who you are as a person for them to invest in you. And I also talked a lot about what I did in undergrad. So I did biomedical engineering, so it linked very well to my master's. And I also did a lot of advocacy work at my university. So I talked a lot about that, and I think that helped because then you're going back into the same environment. Like I was able to make a lot of change at my undergrad in terms of like disability sports clubs and like changes to the teaching and things like that. Like I did a lot of work with the student union, and then you're going back into another university environment, and I can do the same thing at my new university, and I have. So I think that like shows that you have the potential to keep doing those things.
Yeah, thanks so much, Letty. One more for Joe is, do you have any advice about studying with a disability?
I think the big sort of thing I can say is don't be afraid to share exclusively some of the challenges that you face and some of the barriers. Specifically for me with my course, at times I kind of have to be on site and at other times I don't. So it's kind of very much a hybrid course. But one of the things that the challenges that I've had alongside it is how do I kind of work professionally alongside studying? And there's a couple of times, for example, it was kind of like, can you do your performance and then travel the next day after that to come down and do a workshop? And so I sort of had to be very honest with the fact that with my disability that fatigue is a big part of it. And so if I was to travel sort of after a performance, I may not get the best out of the workshop that I'm doing or the time that I'm on site. So I think it's really about being as open and as honest as you can with whoever your course leader is, if there's any sort of student services or disability support with any university that you might be studying at, don't be afraid to kind of say, hey, this isn't working for me, and what can we do to make it better? Because when I sort of explained that to my course leader, then we were able to start looking at different options that meant that I got the best out of my course, but then it wasn't detrimental or a struggle for me with my disability. And it's kind of finding that balance because I think a lot of the time, specifically with, again, the industry I'm in, there aren't many disabled people. So sometimes you can almost feel like you're having to educate other people about how it works for you. And that can also be a bit of a struggle. But I think at the same time, I think this kind of comes back a little bit with disability leadership, specifically with the course that I'm on. They haven't really had many disabled people on it, so you're sort of almost leading the way and paving the possibilities for people that come after you. So it's just about balancing those two things, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Joe. We've got one more question, pre-written question now, and this is sort of open to the whole panel. And the question is, were there ways you connected your personal story to your wider social mission that felt authentic rather than overly personal? I'm going to hand over to Molly just to start this off.
Thank you. I suppose the first thing to say is that there's absolutely no need to describe difficulties that you've had in excessive detail. So you do not need to give a sort of blow by blow of the time, like I'm sure you could, about things like, oh, my lecturer wouldn't meet my reasonable adjustments, which led to this, in order to say that you want to support disabled people or change the community or change the narrative. You can be brief. You can use it where it needs to be used. So, for example, if it affects your grades or something like that, then absolutely bring in an example, but you do not need to go into the sort of detail that would make it difficult to write down. In terms of what I did, there were certain things that happened to me that really led to the things that I was doing before I was a scholar. So, things like being the Students with Disability officer for my students' union. And those felt like part of my story. I was doing those things because I'd experienced negative things. And so I felt that I did bring them in, but not in great detail. What mattered was what I'd done about it, what I'd done as the, disabled students officer. And that was much more important to me than the initial sort of spark that led to everything I'd done since.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Molly. Do Joe or Letty, do you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I can sort of come in a little bit. So I think sort of exactly as Molly said, it's you want to share some of your personal story, but you don't have to go into such a great extent that maybe you feel as though it's something that is uncomfortable for you. I think that is mainly sort of a personal choice. And I think for me, when I applied, I sort of felt it was important to go into some detail of some of the challenges because it kind of made me understand, and hopefully the panel as well kind of understand where my thinking was. So it was almost like I've had these challenges because of this has led me to do that. And then with the support of the Snowdon Trust on my course or my prospective course, my aim is to then hopefully eliminate some of those challenges for other disabled people. And I think another thing to think of, I know, when people kind of think of disability leadership or advocacy, sometimes we can think that we need to do really, really big things to kind of almost get noticed or to make change. And I think what I sort of learned is that sometimes there's smaller things that you can do over a longer range of time, which then means that you're actually affecting change. So when you're sort of thinking about things in terms of disability leadership, it could be, for example, I'm a disabled person, I've had these challenges, I've then connected with another disabled person or other disabled people, and we've talked about what some of these challenges are and then supported each other. And I think that's hopefully an example of like disability leadership and the fact that you're leading the way and addressing those sometimes challenging conversations. But it's also something that hopefully if people are doing that already that they can bring into their application. So I think really think about what you're doing already and don't feel like, oh, I really want to get the Snowdon Master Scholarship or the DFN scholarship, so I need to do X, Y, and Z and sign up to all these things. I think really think about what you're doing, and then that will make your application more authentic and hopefully relatable to the panel.
Thanks, Joe. Letty, if you want to come in on this one, feel free, but if not.
That's right. Yeah, same as Joe, I think I talked about my disability more specifically when it came to, I think there was a question relating to how the money would help you. And so at that point it I felt comfortable to share sort of the way my disability would make a master's more financially inaccessible to me. And then within the application I talked about my like disability advocacy on social media and how a lot of that had sort of stemmed from some of it's advocacy, some of it's education, and some of it's just sharing my life, and how a lot of that stemmed from what I wish I had seen when I first became disabled. And I think that is quite personal. Like the stuff that you share on social media is a reflection of a lot of things going on inside of your head and your mind and your life. And, you know, mine had been the things that I had struggled with my disability that I had then overcome or I'd come to terms with or I'd found ways of adapting to, and then I'm sharing that information. So it's quite personal. But it's also something I share with the world. So I didn't feel like it was uncomfortable to explain those things. And I kind of, yeah, it was kind of like, how does my personal journey motivate? Like, how does my personal experience motivate me to do these things? Because I think that is the most authentic part of a lot of disabled people's stories, is that it has come from like a real difficulty that you've had that's so internal, and then what can you do with that that's positive? And that's great to look at for leadership potential, but it also just makes it so authentic and real, because you're not going to stop feeling those things. You're not going to want to stop making change because it affects you so viscerally in all of your life. And so I think I really leaned into that explanation of my journey and way of explaining things.
Thanks, Letty, and to the rest of the panel. Those were really, really brilliant answers. We've got a Q&A function available in the chat. You should be able to access it on the pane at the bottom of your screen. And we're going to open up for a few live questions now for the panel. So if you want to ask anyone on the panel any questions, please go ahead and submit your questions now. I think my colleagues Katie and Helen will be helping out with managing the questions as well. So we do have one question, and I think, Molly, this is probably best placed for you. And it asks, how much weight is given to references and what kind of people would make a good reference?
I'm wondering if maybe Helen or Katie wants to come in that, just in case there's any restrictions I'm not aware of.
Yeah, Helen, maybe if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, I can come in. And also, I apologise. I was being really efficient answering all the questions. So maybe I've answered
I can go back through some
that maybe should have been discussed on the panel.
Yeah, no problem.
So the references, we ask for the references from applicants who've reached stage 3, so who are at the point of being interviewed. We generally ask for that to be an academic reference if you are applying having come straight from undergraduate study, or from your current or most recent employer if you are coming from the world of work. Because really we just want to get a sense of the person you are in delivering the work and ambitions that you've talked about. So people who know you well in the context of your academic study or your work would be brilliant.
Thanks, Helen. We've got a couple more questions coming in now. There's one here. The stage 1 guidance includes the question, how do you define leadership in the context of your own experience, achievements, and ambitions? Does our definition of leadership mean specifically how we define leadership in disability rights advocacy, or how we define leadership more broadly? I think, Helen, that's quite a good one for you as well.
Well, yeah, so I left that one there because actually, just as I was reading it, Letty was talking about it as part of the questions earlier. So I think it's already been answered to some extent. But I would say leadership is in the context as as we've asked the question, in the context of your own experience, your own achievements, and your own ambitions. So really how it relates to what your future plans are. And I think the likelihood is that probably is going to include information about how you see yourself as a disabled leader, but as a leader generally. So I would expect that your answer probably has elements of both of those things in it.
Great answer. We're definitely getting questions coming in now, which is nice. If it's the same course run by 2 different universities and I want to apply for both to maximize acceptance, do I need to apply twice, one application for each uni course? No, you don't. You just apply one time to us. If you're applying to multiple different courses or institutions, you'll be given space to explain that in your application. Do you consider wider circumstances that go beyond disability but make life with a disability even more difficult, such as financial and familial difficulties? I think Helen and Molly have touched on this quite a bit about how your application is considered as a whole rather than just as individual components. But if either of you want to elaborate on that, please do.
I would only just say, I think this is an important award, and I know everybody really wants to get it right. The thing that makes an application feel that it works really well is that there's a golden thread that comes through it that links your experience of disabling barriers, which links the experience that you've gained in your studies or in your work, and the plans that you want to deliver in the future. And when all of those questions that you answer in the application form just all come together to tell the same story, then that creates something really powerful. And that's the sort of the X factor, if you like, of an application, which is hard to pinpoint. But so there's not one single part of the process that, or the questions that is more important than any other. It's about how all of that comes together to shape you and your disability leadership plan. That might be frustrating as the person who's just about to write that, but I tell you, when we read them, they are knockout applications.
Thanks, Helen. We've got one here that if anyone on the panel would like to answer, please do. And that is, how would you approach your application if you have more than one disability?
I can answer that.
Thanks, Molly.
This is something we see quite often, and it's completely fine. We've got a section that says, what is your disability? And I believe there's a section that says 2 or more, and you can explain a little bit more detail about that. What would be helpful is if, when you're explaining how disability barriers have impacted you so far, if you're sort of specific about this was this disability and this was this disability, so that we can, the more specific you can be, the more helpful it is to us. But it's something we see really commonly. It shouldn't put you off. It's completely normal. Just submit an application as normal.
Thanks, Molly. There's another one here that is open to, I think, the whole panel, and that is, what are the Snowdon Scholarship recipients proud of achieving in their journey so far following their award? And thank you for sharing so earnestly. Does anyone want to start on that one?
I can go, but I'm excited to hear
Yeah,
what
thanks, Molly.
says. I think my involvement in this charity has been a really important part of the things that I'm proud of after my scholarship was completed. So my scholarship was 2021 to 2022. And I've been involved with various panels with the Snowdon Trust ever since, which has been incredible. I think it also gave me a great deal of confidence that what I was doing was important, which has sort of shaped the things I've been doing since. So things like being the chair of the disability network at my work, my full-time job. I think it gave me the confidence and sort of continued my passion for everything that I was doing at university. So for me, it's there's lots of things I'm proud of, but definitely this charity and giving scholarships has been number one.
Thanks, Molly. Letty, I wasn't sure if you had a hand up.
Yeah,
or...
I did. So I kind of got 2 answers. The first is, I'm just really proud of myself for like my life at the moment, independent living. I've been struggling with my health quite a lot, and I didn't think I would be able to do a master's in London, and it's a lot to do, and I have been really proud of the environment that I've built, and a lot of that has been with the help from the Snowdon scholarship, the money that has allowed me to live somewhere that's accessible and set up a learning environment for myself that is really, really accessible. And I'm finding my master's so much easier than my undergrad, where I face a lot more barriers. So I'm really proud of myself for persevering and setting up a lot of things before I came to do my master's that has allowed me to do that. And then also academically, doing some really exciting work with the Centre of Language Inclusion at UCL. We're working with this project Relate, which helps people with non-standard speech have transcriptions. And so I'm currently working with a stroke survivor, and it's just really exciting to do hands-on work with disabled people and to be in an environment where disability is like the focus of everything that's being done, and it's expected and accommodated for, and that my perspective as a disabled person is such a positive in that environment. I mean, disabled perspectives should always be a positive, but to everyone else it's a positive for once as well. So I'm absolutely just thrilled with the masters that I'm doing, and I'm proud of myself for getting here and going for it, and yeah, getting on with it.
Thanks so much, Letty. That was a really brilliant answer. Just reading through the questions that we have left. If anyone has any questions that they're thinking about submitting, please do it now, because we've only got about 10 minutes left on the webinar. We do have a question here that asks, how specific would you recommend to be in terms of future ambition? For example, would it make sense to apply if I want to be involved in a specific sector, but I also have more than one goal?
Should I answer that? And thank you, because I was just about to start typing it. I think the reality is that we would like to see a degree of specificity in your future ambitions, because that's what helps us to determine through the process what your plans are and what the likely impact is that you're going to have. But we also recognise that we're asking you to say that at the point you're embarking on a master's, and for some applicants they might not have had any work experience yet, so it's very difficult to be very specific. So again, perhaps not a very helpful answer, but there's going to be a balance there. We would like to know that you have a plan for your journey, that you have an idea of where you'd like to end up in say the next 5 to 10 years, but you have quite a clear plan about what you're going to do in the more immediate term, which will help to get you there and quite possibly shape and evolve your ideas on the way.
Thanks, Helen. We do have another question that I'm going to partly answer myself, and then I'll hand on to the panel, and that is, if we don't get selected, can we be part of the Disabled Leaders Network, and how would you recommend we get involved with disability networking and advocacy in general? So I'll just say that the Disabled Leaders Network, all long-listed candidates throughout the scholarship process are invited to join the Disabled Leaders Network. These are applicants that reach the very final stages of the process, and the Disabled Leaders Network themselves, they do open for external applications, I want to say yearly, and this is typically in the summer. So if you want to keep up to date with the Disabled Leaders Network, you can find them online. They're on social media. They have a website. Maybe Helen or Katie can paste it in the chat. But for the second part of the question, I'll pass it on to the panel, and that was, how would you recommend we get involved with disability networking and advocacy in general?
Sorry, I completely didn't hear what you said. Could you say it?
Yeah, of course. How would you recommend we get involved with disability networking and advocacy in general?
Can I answer?
Yeah, of course.
There's not one way, and it also doesn't have to always be the sort of stuff that, you know, people post about on LinkedIn and go, I have chaired a panel, I have done this thing. It can be about supporting people you know, people you meet. It can be those small incremental changes. It can be standing up for someone where it's needed. It could be learning more about things like the Equality Act, so that when you are you know, supporting others, you can be informed. It could be about joining a union and being involved in their sort of EDI committees. There's a million different ways to get involved. So don't limit yourself to don't limit yourself to only doing the things that feel like the big stuff, because all of it's really important.
Thank you, Molly. And if anyone else on the panel has advice on disability networking and advocacy, please do jump in. Letty?
Yeah, I would say I started out in a students' union at my undergrad. It's just a bunch of people who are really passionate about making positive changes and increasing people's experiences at university. Obviously, university is a very specific environment, but I think the people I interacted with in general, they want to make changes outside of university as well. They're people who are really passionate about improving everyone's experiences and access to things. So I started out there, and then I I'm big into disability sports, and I've met a lot of great advocates that way, because disability sports people are always pushing to improve the inclusion of disability sports. And those, I would say, like sports and my students' union. And then a lot of universities also have like a disabled students society as well.
Thanks, Letty. I just want to remind everyone that this is sort of your last chance to ask any questions, because we've got about 5 minutes left. And for the panel, there are a couple of thank you messages in the chat for your honesty here today. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. This one is maybe best directed to Molly, and that is, does the panel have any general advice for applicants who plan to pursue PhDs related to disability research or advocacy? So I think maybe from more how you can evidence that in your application, that perspective.
Yeah, interesting question, and exciting to hear that you're planning to pursue a PhD. I'm not sure whether there's anything specific we can say on how to get funding. That, we don't fund PhD students, and I'm personally not aware of a body which it does specifically for disabled students, so I might be missing something. However, it's a really exciting area, right? And I think, like any other application, what you want to be able to do is prove that it's something you're committed to. So thinking about what it is that you can do now in relation to disability and disability advocacy would be my piece of advice, but I'm not sure if there's Snowdon Trust advice on this.
Would you have any advice for applicants who are applying for the Master Scholarship and plan to go on to PhD, maybe how they can evidence the long-term impact of that PhD?
Yes. I think there's a few things that you might be able to talk about. You might be able to talk about being in a field where there aren't many other disabled people. You might be able to talk about how you can change that field in order to pave the way for other disabled people. What you're trying to do is set out where you want to go, and if a PhD is part of that, then the best thing is to say so and explain exactly how it's going to support you in your longer term goals.
Thanks very much, Molly.